notice. Yeah, now the notice
There it
just
is.
came up. Yeah.
Good deal. So who would like to start first? Last time it was the eldest to youngest. Do you think it would be females to older male and then baby
Well,
last?
mine is the quickest, so maybe I should go first.
Okay, well,
I think
you go for it.
Okay, I think that I just had one thing. I wanted to be a ballerina from when I was up in Fort Chipewyan until the day I realized that I did not have ballerina legs. But,
Okay.
but I don't know how many years, but I think of every year Dad took me to a ballet, and to me it was like 10 years worth or something, but maybe it was only 3 years. And I can't even remember the name of the ballet. I do remember that he didn't actually like ballet. He thought the men looked funny in their tights and that they looked like frogs or something.
Okay.
And but it was like a super special feeling that it was my dad and I going out, and we'd get all dressed up, and I don't think we went out for dinner or anything. Uh, but it was, and I'm sure it was at I don't even what the National Arts Center
Yeah.
built
Yeah.
by then. It must
Yeah.
have been. So if it was before that, I can't remember.
Okay.
And just as a quick little aside, is tomorrow night I am taking Lawrence to the ballet with me.
Well, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Give him my condolences.
Oh, no, that could be
I
really
know.
good.
Some of the modern ballets are so creative. Like, I think story ballets can be pretty boring, uh, but modern ballets are just like spectacular, great creativity with, beautiful costumes and sometimes weird costumes. Anyway, it's really fun.
Yeah.
So that's my best, really great memory of Dad, is going
Oh,
to ballet with him.
that's
Now, what?
wonderful.
Yeah.
How old would you have been at that time, Sylvia?
I think, well, I was in Ottawa, so I probably 10 to 14 or something, or
Yeah.
12 to 16, that
Yeah.
era.
So, really, in a sense, your first date was with your dad,
Yeah, yeah,
and you know, teaching you how special you were and stuff like that.
yeah,
His
yeah,
little princess who loves to twirl, and there they are together.
yeah. I think
That's
it's really,
beautiful.
yeah, it was
Yeah.
a very thoughtful thing, especially
Yeah.
since Dad, like Mom kind of, it was the traditional dad, wait till your father gets home, and, so to have that kind of loving, caring aspect of him, and doing something that I really wanted to do, but he was not so much, was not really in his wheelhouse. So yeah, it's a very
Well,
special memory to me.
thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Jim.
Well, I can remember uh, three events.
Hmm.
Uh, I'd be hard pressed to tell you in what order. Um, I remember, do the call letter CKPM sound familiar?
Not for me. You mean in the Ottawa area?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
I
Okay. I think there was a new radio station that came on the air
Okay.
that was almost exclusively talk radio,
Okay.
and its call sign, I believe, was CKPM.
Okay.
And so I know Dad and I reached out and were able to coax an invitation out of them, and were able to go down and see how radio worked and
Hmm.
discovered how much uh, CKPM was automated.
Okay.
And the parts that weren't automated were the live talk shows that they were doing. But all of the rest of it was canned. And basically, for a significant portion of the day, it was the computer that was running the station
Hmm.
and the girl who was answering the phone at the front desk. And that was it. And that, I remember being very stretched about that. Because I'd always thought that, radio stations had DJs and, you know, it was such a wonderful fairyland in my mind. And then to find out, well, they're phasing people out and starting to let the computer do it. And this was long before the PC. So these were obviously special sequencers
Okay.
that kept everything doing what it was supposed to be doing when it was supposed to be doing it. So that was one event. Another one was very similar. The station in Smiths Falls that escapes me right now.
CJET,
Ah,
CJET.
that's it. Yes. And I had a special interest in that for two reasons. First of all, John Wyatt
Yeah.
had built hi-fi monaural sound system with a rather large but very good sounding speaker. And he built the FM receiver as all tubes, including the little pixie tube that gave you the signal strength indication, and then the tube audio system to feed the speaker. And he said, well, there wouldn't be any point in doing stereo because we're listening to it all over the house. We'd lose the stereo effect. So I just built a monaural and I was so impressed. Oh, well, I just built a monaural. No big deal. I was going like, oh, that's so neat, and he'd punched the chassis out and everything. And it was just a real work of art. And it was always on CJET.
Okay.
So Dad and I, on a Saturday, had been able to make arrangements to go down and meet with somebody at the station and see what it looked like there. For them, automation was still in the future somewhere, and whereas CKPM had lots of brand new money and it just broken into the market, so they came with piles of cash and all the latest and greatest. So it was neat to see the way they use things. It um, amazed me that they were, so good at keeping their records sounding good. So when they started to track, you weren't hearing tiki tiki pop pop, before you finally led into the music or whatever it was. And then the final memory was the super weekend where we crossed the border at Prescott and went to Governor,
Oh.
where we found Wigs FM with the home of the Purple Caniff.
Yes.
And I remember it coming as such a shock to me when the DJ let the cat out of the bag that Kniff was actually Fink spelled backwards. I'd never
Oh.
made that connection. And it was, a little cluster of offices up on the second floor of a building that had nothing to do with radio. And that was their studio. And no automation. And but their DJs were lots of fun. And they were quite happy to show us around. And then we drove down to Syracuse.
Oh.
And that's where I began to question American sanity, because who would be stupid enough to use concrete to pave a freeway, especially where winter happens? And you're going kawam, kawam, kawam as you're hitting the seams going down. I don't know if the car was ever the same after that trip. And it was amazing how absolutely flat it was, how exposed it was to the eastern end of Lake Ontario.
Mm-hmm.
And we were able to make the trip because there was no serious weather, or we would have been trapped in bands of snow.
Yeah.
And so I got to Syracuse. We actually found the station, and it was locked up tight as a drum, and clearly totally automated.
Oh no.
Oh yeah. So once we had that rather disheartening discovery, Dad somehow had found that Disney's original Fantasia was showing at the theater that night. So we parked our car in multi-story garage, and went, found some place for dinner, and then went over and watched the movie. It's the first and only time I've ever seen it. And I was duly impressed because, of course, Fantasia was vintage Disney that is at the top of his game. And so then I remember the horrible feeling as we walked, and we could see the Vista Cruiser down there, not more than 60 feet from where we were, looking through the bars, because they'd locked up at the time they said they did, which we never noticed.
Oh.
And so Dad had to phone the local police department, explain the predicament we were in, and was there any way they could find the person who had the keys, and we'd gladly pay him double what we owed him, if we could just get our car back.
Yeah.
Because we needed to be back in Ottawa for Monday morning. And I think at that time they weren't open on Sundays just yet. And really odd looking at it. But we continued that same thing. Ted Bodfish and I, one of the summers I was down to London, hopped a bus to St. Thomas to visit the CHLO studio.
Oh.
And CHLO was quite an elderly station. And so at that point in time, they had no automation. And so it was a very interesting trip. We took the bus down Then we took the bus back and, got an LTC back to Hale Street. But we had fun doing it too. So it was,
Oh,
3 wonderful trips with Dad, and I enjoyed them, and I was very thankful that he was willing to let me do some stuff that there's no way I ever could have done on my own, at least not at that age.
well, thank you.
Yeah, that was
By the
quite an
way,
adventure.
it, by the way, Jim, I Googled it. CKPM was an Ottawa radio station that broadcast at 1440 AM in 1964. It played middle of the road music and focused on local news. In 1970, the CRTC revoked the station's license and the station was sold to Bayton Broadcasting in 72 and changed its call sign to CFGO. So it changed from CKPM to CFGO in 1972.
Okay, well, that's
Yeah.
interesting. I know
And
one of the things that's very interesting about that is their main talk show host was very, very intelligent.
mhm,
And he really made a big deal out of the fact that it was fun doing the show in Ottawa because the average Ottawan had a much higher level of education
okay.
than the average citizen of other cities in which he had done talk shows. And therefore, he was very much enjoying the fact that they could have much more intelligent conversations.
Huh, that's interesting.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, Carl.
I'm going to jump in here. Um, First one was 1966 when Dad and I went off. We drove up to Renfrew and stayed overnight um, in town at a motel, and then the next day we must have had a guidebook or something that, oh, here's different places, and we had spent the Friday evening looking through, and oh, well, let's try this Aylen Lake, and so we just kept on going west along Highway 60 and went to Aylen Lake, and I think we stayed over. It must have been Saturday night that we camped at Aylen Lake, and we may have found someone who took us for a ride around the lake. And Dad inquired probably at the landing at Bob and okay, what was Bob's name?
Leeds,
Oh,
Pardon me.
Lee.
Yeah,
Bob and Lee.
Bob and Lee Chapman. There we go. And asked about rentals and property. And well, didn't we buy the cottage in 1967? So they must have sniffed around pretty seriously and purchased that. So
Yeah.
that was a special weekend going off with Dad for that. I remember going to um, a boat show in Montreal. We took the train in the middle of the winter um, and went down to the Bonaventure Center, got off at the Queen Elizabeth Hotel, and walked to the Bonaventure Center. And I had never been to such a big boat show or event in a big building like that, and that was just amazing. And so that was fun to do. I remember that um, something had frozen, and they took uh, the railway personnel took a flare and were using it as a torch to thaw out some mechanical part. And I remember getting some of that sulfur smoke in my lung, and I was coughing all day. It was it was it was very irritating to the throat. Go figure. But we survived and got back. It was a day trip. It was fun. Um, and then there was another time when Dad and I took the night train down to Toronto on a Friday night. And I remember waking up in Brockville in the middle of the night and looking out of our sleeper and seeing Brockville where we were. They they shunted us onto the or they hooked us up to the train that was going between Montreal and Toronto. And got downtown Toronto by 6 a.m. and we just spent the day as tourists, just walking to different sites down there, City Hall and different places for shopping and looking around, and then caught the train back to Ottawa, got in at 10 and came home. And it was just special spending time with Dad that way. So those were my three memories. I'm going to be bold and ask you. It occurred to me, Sylvia, you were telling about going to the theater with Dad. Do you remember all those times we went to see movies in the Capitol Theater? And what was the other theater that we saw on
Elgin?
The Elgin and the Capitol, wasn't it? And boy, those, you'd never find a theater like that where you went to see. But I remember seeing Almost Angels, In Search of the Castaways. How many times did we see In Search of the Castaways? But do you have any memory about going as a family to see movies at the Capitol Theater and elsewhere?
Yep.
No.
Really?
I I think my only theater memory, because if you'd asked me, I said we never went to. I was on a parallel track, I think. But I remember when I was 11 years old going to a movie theater to see Flipper.
Oh, okay.
And this is why other later memories, my earlier memories might have been wiped out, is that I feel like I was with Judy Switzer or something. I don't know. It was
Okay.
and some old guy came and sat next to me, and I was so
Oh,
intimidated. And I had my little purse, and he actually stole my wallet from my purse, and I was totally aware of it the whole time, but I was so
oh,
intimidated by an older person
yeah.
that I didn't say, "What the hell are you doing?" Excuse my
Oh, that's
language.
so sad.
Yeah, and I
Oh,
remember like I was a Nancy Drew fan at the time, and afterwards, why didn't I run after him saying, "Stop thief"? So
yeah.
Yeah.
so anyway, that's my kind of memory of going to movies.
Okay.
But
I'm glad, Jim, that you remembered. I had nice warm uh cozy feelings of going to movies with the family, and we would
Yeah. Well, sometimes I think we went as a family,
yeah.
and on occasion, I think mom and dad dropped us off
Oh, okay.
and we get their shopping done and then pick us up. And we knew you know, when we got to that part of the movie where we'd come in, that,
Okay.
that it was now time to head towards the lobby, and it wouldn't be long before mom and dad were there to pick us up. And,
Oh, okay.
uh,
Okay.
they'd be kind enough to get us, big bin of the popcorn or something that we could munch away on while we were watching the Three Stooges go to space or what have you for that
It,
Oh,
it may
particular.
it's-
it may be that I didn't want to go to those movies because I never liked Jerry Lewis or the Three Stooges. I've all of a sudden like, why are they wrecking so many things?
Oh,
It really bothered me seeing them smash things and make a mess.
But you don't remember In Search of the
I
Castaways?
do remember In Search of the
Okay.
Castaways. I
And
had,
Swiss Family Robinson, I remember seeing,
yeah.
yeah,
yeah.
no, I remember that. Do you remember Flipper?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I had a
Yeah.
crush on that 11-year-old actor.
Luke or whatever his
Yeah.
name. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. He was so cute. Oh.
Well, here we are, 6 decades later, and I'm still trying to get rid of the sound of music.
Oh, well, there's some of us who like it. You
Yeah,
had a
especially
crush.
mom.
You had a crush on that guy, Haley Mills. I always liked watching her,
Oh
the,
yeah. What's
the
the one where
actress.
they switched places? What's that called? The Parent Trap.
Parent Trap, and
Yeah.
our kids love that. And the remake, we just love that. Anyways, it was a fun thing. Well, I should bring this to a close, but this is so special doing this. I appreciate you doing this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't
such
have
a
anything to warn you to do for next week, but I'll come up with something. I think we're um, I maybe I'll ask um, what music uh, what music do you remember? What were some songs that you think of? Like, is that reminiscence worth? I don't
I
know.
think, well, we did one time make a list. I thought the three of us, and I wrote down some of the songs that we remember from up at the cottage, like Little Bit of
Oh,
Soul and stuff like
oh
that. So we could,
yeah, that would be fun reviewing that. Yeah, a little
yeah.
bit of soul for sure. Oh yeah. Uh,
Yeah, yeah.
and I Am a Rock. I remember
Oh,
that
yeah.
too.
Yeah, maybe we should, save it for next week. But
It
Okay.
I
was
have
Siphon
something
and
to talk.
Garfinkel, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah, it
yeah.
was. I'm gonna find out where to stop recording. Come on, how do I do that again? It's like I try and discover this each time. Record and transcribe. Stop recording. There we go. I stopped.